something we've actually already touched on, just how anti-human the climate change movement is. Al Gore sees the climate change agenda as a vehicle towards population control. Now, they never ever say whose population is being controlled or by whom, but I'm willing to guess it's not Al Gore's. It's probably yours and mine.
That's exactly right. It's so funny, the hypocrisy too. Al Gore's got 4 children of his own. Then Ted Turner, another one of these big population control zealots. I actually got a chance to ask him a couple of questions down in Rio de Janeiro, where he was down there promoting population control. Turns out he's got 5 children, right? So it's always us who need to not have children and not consume resources and ride our bikes and all the rest of it. But there is, a very, very sinister side to this movement. And they typically don't talk about it in terms that would alarm people. They couch it in, oh, we just need population control because there's pressure on the Earth's resources and things like this. But Al Gore gave some really interesting hints about his agenda. He put up some graphs there. And I actually sat through his whole speech with, in Poland, which was probably a waste of an hour, but it did produce an article for me. And people like to read about Al Gore because he's wrong so often. And, of course, It snowed when he arrived, right? But he put up these graphs on there, and he showed the population of China, which had leveled off. And he didn't explain how that was achieved. If he had gone a little further, he would have pointed out that this involves some of the most barbarous policies you can imagine, right? In China, working with Planned Parenthood and with the UN Population Fund, and this has come out in congressional hearings in the United States, they have enforced a one-child policy for many decades. Now it's 2 children. It's just as brutal, but you're allowed to have 2. And this involves forced abortions, right? If they find a pregnant woman who has already exceeded her quota of babies, right? So she already has 1 baby, they will literally strap the woman to a table and kill her baby on purpose. They talk about we're pro-choice activists. They're not pro-choice. They are pro-death activists. And this is the lengths they're willing to go to suppress the human population. The UN has a whole agency, the UN Population Fund, that runs around. They put out a report a couple years ago about how there's too many Africans. How are we going to get the Africans to stop having babies? I mean, this is so racist. If a conservative said something like that, they'd be tarred and feathered by the next morning. And yet the UN does it with our tax money, and no one complains. So Al Gore actually showed on his thing, well, here's the population of Africans, and it's still going up. And here's the Chinese. Look how great they did. And, when you start listening, when you start picking up on these little cues, a whole bunch of the UN climate people have praised communist China. Cristiana Figueres, who we talked about earlier, said China is doing it right on climate policies. And in Copenhagen, I was actually at the UN Climate Summit where the Chinese delegation said, hey, our one-child policy has resulted in 300 million fewer births. If you add this much CO2 emissions per human, you can see that we've drastically reduced our CO2 emissions by cutting the population. And all I could think to myself was, yeah, how many forced abortions did you do to get those numbers? How many women did you terrorize? How many husbands did you beat up so you could kidnap their wives and kill their babies? This is absolutely sick, and I hope people will realize that these people are not your friend, and they will go to extreme lengths to bring your life, your family, your freedom under their control.
That's an excerpt from my daily show, The Ezra Levant Show, weekdays at 8 p.m. Eastern. Every day I do a monologue, interview a guest, and read my fan mail and my hate mail. To subscribe, go to therebel.media/shows.